Hey guys, back again with another video. I know it's been a while. Another games I've been playing recently video. I've been playing a lot of games instead of doing a review for each one. There is one game I wish I do kind of want to review since I loved it so much, but I figure there's just so much I've been playing that I might as well do this massive video here. So yeah, let's just get right into things. Not too many like physical games to show. I've actually traded in a lot of these, or at least two of these. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the channel yet, but I'm actually going to Japan in October, October 7th, and I'm going with a couple friends. We're going for 2 weeks, so I gotta be a lot more picky with my game purchases, and I gotta start trading stuff in to get other games. I gotta save as much money as I can for that trip, and it's already been pretty expensive. So, yeah, basically I've kind of made a rule not to actually buy any game until after Japan. So basically anytime I want a new release that I'm really excited for, I'm trading in games or doing a satisfaction exchange is what it's called at EB Games. So yeah, a couple of these games, even though I've actually really enjoyed them, I traded in just because, yeah, I gotta save money where I can. But let's start with some of the... I guess some of a digital game really, and that's Katana Zero on the Switch. I think it might be coming to PS4 later. I think it's on PC as well, but I'm pretty sure PS4 and Xbox One it's coming out later, which is interesting. I think there's a lot of indie games now where they have like a kind of Switch exclusive. I can't say the word, but there a lot of these games are like exclusive to Switch, like these indie games for a little bit before they come to PS4, which is kind of interesting. So Katana Zero, if you've seen gameplay of it, it basically, I mean, the best way to kind of explain it would be like a side-scrolling Hotline Miami. Basically, you have these very short levels where you got to kill all the enemies in a time limit to move on to the next part, and you die in one hit. And enemies are extremely fast, but you're extremely fast as well, and all the enemies will die for the most part in one hit. And basically, you've got a few different attacks at your disposal. You've got your kind of standard sword attack. You've got a dodge roll. But you can also activate slow-mo for a little bit. And in slow-mo, you can actually even slash an enemy's bullet and basically slash it back at the enemy to kill them, which is pretty useful. And you can basically... slow-mo is good for different enemies. I'm trying to think. There's some other thing you could do. But I already can't remember because it's been a while since I played the game now. But you have a pretty nice moveset at your disposal, and the different enemy types, there's always going to be different ways to take them down. So there's a surprising amount of strategy with how you want to take out these levels. You got to kind of memorize enemy locations. You can also pick up weapons that are kind of throughout the environment. Like you might pick up a flamethrower that's good for certain enemies, or a remote bomb. Which is pretty good as well. There's a lot of traps that you can use too. There's like these crushers that you can use later in the game where you activate the switches. Crushers will come down on enemies. And the way you can kind of combine these different abilities is pretty fascinating. If you've watched like speedruns on this game, it's pretty crazy the amount of things that you can do in it. And every time you finish a level, it kind of like gives you a slow motion version of the successful run that you had. It's a very difficult game, like with Hotline Miami, so you're going to be dying a lot. But because you are immediately thrown right back into the action when you die, and the levels are like never longer than like 30 seconds, it never gets annoying. You're going to die hundreds of times, but it's never going to get annoying because the game doesn't waste your time. It's excellent in making sure that it's not wasting the player's time. Now, with Hotline Miami, it's got like a 2D pixel art kind of visual style. It looks really nice. I really like the way this game looks. But also, it's got like this really... how do you describe it? Like the storyline and the overall vibe to this game and the cutscenes are very like... The game is very vivid and lurid. Lurid is probably the best way to describe it, actually. Where it's like super over the top with its violence, and there's a lot of mystique to it, like mystery to it. Maybe not as much. I feel like Hotline Miami is a little bit too abstract in a lot of ways. Like, it's Hotline Miami, I don't know. I don't think anyone could possibly tell you what the fuck even happens in those games. They're very confusing and convoluted. But Katana Zero is not so much. It's not so convoluted as those games, but it's definitely got a lot of like the mystery elements and a lot of weird shit to it. A lot of the characters you'll meet are very bizarre. But yeah, you'll meet like these really like crazy characters, like these serial killer type characters. There's a lot of like a lot of crazy violence in this game. But I actually was pretty engaged with the story in this game. I thought it took some interesting turns. I was kind of surprised by how into it I was. It's, you know, there's more story to this game than you would expect. It's not just like level after level after level. But your character basically is like, you're basically taking on these contracts from like this mysterious guy, and you basically, your character kind of has PTSD. I don't really want to get into what that part of the story really, but you're kind of figuring out your character's past, and the reason why you're able to slow down time essentially is because of this drug. I forget what they call it, but there's like this drug in game that basically is what's causing the slow motion. There's a lot going on with the story. I don't really want to say too much on it, but I thought it was pretty interesting. I gotta say, definitely a lot more than Hotline Miami. The thing I don't like about the story though is the ending. The game ends on a cliffhanger ending, and it really feels like a part 1 of like 2 or 3. They should have probably called it like Katana Zero Part 1 or something, because yeah, the ending is just, it was frustrating. I was like, really? Like, just no conclusion whatsoever. It's just an immediately, like, you know, play the next game to figure out what happens. But, yeah, the game's maybe like 4 hours long. It's not like too long, but I think it's a perfect length for me for this type of game. But the music's really good too. The music is fantastic. Really cool game. Definitely check it out if you have a Switch or a PC. I think it's one of the better indie games of this year. I think, was it Shintai Reviews? He mentioned the game to me and recommended it, and I'm glad he did. I really enjoyed it. So moving on, Crash Team Racing. Don't have the game to show. I did trade this one in. I'm probably going to buy it again at a later date. This game's going to drop in price. You're going to be able to find this game pretty cheap later on. And I finished the story mode. I didn't do too much other than that. I was pretty excited for this game, so I don't know. I was a bit maybe let down in some ways. It's definitely an enjoyable game. It's a far more technical kart racer than Mario Kart. In fact, to even stand a chance in this game, you have to drift and boost the entire match, essentially. If you're not constantly boosting, you're going to lose. Because this game is fucking hard. Like, I don't know what is with Crash Bandicoot, the early Crash games. They're just, I don't know, they're just extremely difficult. And this one's no different. I basically, on the medium mode, on the story mode, I was getting my ass kicked. Like, the very first race in this game, I lost a bunch of times. I really had to learn the map and really had to learn the boost mechanic, where you can kind of, as you're drifting, you basically, this meter will fill up, and you can fill it up to 3 times. And each time you're getting a boost, and on the 3rd time, I believe it's the 3rd or 4th, your boost is going to be even better, so you're going to get faster. So you're essentially wanting to drift the entire match because you want to be in boost mode at all times. It's the only way to get ahead of people. And then the items, like with Mario Kart, you've got items too, which basically they're kind of the same items in Mario Kart. There's even a blue shell equivalent. But I find items don't help you as much in this game compared to Mario Kart. Like, if you're in like 6th place, they can be pretty helpful, but if you're in like 2nd or 3rd for a lot of the match, they're not going to help you. You got to just learn the map and not run into obstacles, not fall down pits, which there's way more in this game compared to Mario Kart. Like, some of these tracks are pretty tough. So yeah, for like the first half of medium mode, I was struggling. I got a little better at it. But then there's the bosses. The boss battles in this game are fucked. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, there's some of them that took me like multiple tries. They're just, I feel like a lot of them are kind of cheap, especially the final boss, where he gets like all infinite power-ups like constantly. And it's just like, I don't know, it feels a little unfair with the boss battles. Like, they're just kind of overpowered with the power-ups they get, and they always seem to be ahead of you. So you have to basically be perfect to even stand a chance. And this is medium. I don't even want to think of what hard mode's like. So it's pretty cool in the sense that it's like Diddy Kong Racing a little bit, where you get like a hub world and you're kind of going to different worlds from there. It's not quite as open as Diddy Kong Racing though. The hub worlds are pretty simplistic. There's actually not too much to explore within these hub worlds. But other than the standard races, you also get some other game modes, which I don't think are that good, to be honest. There's like these modes where you got to find crash letters throughout the race and still get first place. if you don't know the map, those levels can be very frustrating, and a lot of times you'll be missing one letter, and you'll just be like, "Where the fuck is this thing?" So a lot of cases you would have to like go to a walkthrough to kind of understand, but you don't actually have to do these races to beat the game. You just have to do the standard races. There's like the time trial type races where you're running into crates to add time to your clock, and essentially you want to beat a certain time. Those I didn't think were that fun. Then there's the purple gem races, which fucking suck. I hate them, where you've got like this big open area and you got to collect all the purple gems in a time limit. And I couldn't even beat the first one. It's extremely strict. You have to like know the exact route to actually get all these. Like it doesn't feel very open-ended. It feels like you have to do it in the very specific way the developers intend to even stand a chance at finishing it. So I gave up on these types of races very quickly. I didn't think they were that fun. Other than that, you've got time trials that you can do. This is like the really hard part of the game. This is what makes the Platinum Trophy apparently like impossible to get. Because each map you have to beat Entropy's time. He's like a ghost that basically goes along the map. You have to beat his time and make sure you're ahead of him at all times. And his times, I did some of them, but most of them are just too much for me because you really have to be an advanced player. You have to master the boost and to completely memorize these maps. But the Nitrous Oxide times are fucking insane. I've tried a few of them, and he is a good like 30 seconds ahead of me in every single one I tried. It's like it's perfect. He does the races perfectly. He'll boost at every time he needs to. He'll take the shortcuts. So if you don't know the shortcuts, you're gonna have a hard time. Absolutely brutal. I could never get the Platinum Trophy in this game. There's no goddamn way. Multiplayer, of course you got multiplayer, online multiplayer. I've heard it's busted on Xbox One and Switch. PS4 seemed to work fine for me. There was no lag or anything. And I definitely had some fun playing online with some friends. So it's a great multiplayer game, especially if you have friends over. It's pretty fun. Definitely not as casual as Mario Kart though, because this game's definitely got some more advanced abilities, and it's a lot more technicals, which is pretty cool. I did enjoy the game from what I played of it. I'm definitely going to go back to it when I buy it again. I don't know, the time that it would take to really get good at the game, it'd be a little much for me. The story mode was maybe a little bit underwhelming. I was expecting more from the hub worlds, and then the bosses I didn't like very much, and then the optional races like the gem stuff I thought was kind of lame. So I don't know. Overall, it's an enjoyable game. I probably don't like it as much as Mario Kart, even though the drifting mechanic really is pretty neat. And it's really cool seeing high-level players play the game. So we'll move on. Dark Souls 2. Okay, so I went back and platinum Dark Souls 2. I want to kind of platinum all the Souls games. Demon Souls I'm going to hold off. It's the only one I haven't done yet. Just because I just holding out for a remaster of that game, even though it might not ever happen. Now, this is crazy. Dark Souls 2, you guys know, when this game came out, I've praised it to hell. Like, I loved Dark Souls 2, and I praised it even years after. I finished the game like 6 times or something like that. So I've always been a pretty big fan of Dark Souls 2, but going back to get the Platinum Trophy in this game has made me realize that it sucks. It's fucking terrible, and I don't understand how I ever liked this game. It's extremely frustrating playing it again, actually. Especially, I think the big thing is coming off of Dark Souls 2, or Dark Souls 3 rather, and Sekiro, that they play so much better as far as the combat. Like, Dark Souls 2 feels like shit to play. It feels so off. It's almost like there's like input lag, and just like your attacks are far more slower. The movement feels a lot more janky. It feels a lot more janky in general, no matter which weapon I was using. And I think a lot of that has to do with like the adaptability stat, to be honest. But I don't know, it just felt so off coming from Dark Souls 3. But I think the big thing with Dark Souls 2, I'm not going to talk about this game too much because I've talked about it a million times before. The level design in this game is fucking trash. Like, most of the levels in this game are just garbage. It's basically how many mobs of enemies can we throw at you? And the way enemies track you in this game, the way they aggro them is just insane. We'll talk about the Iron Keep in specifically, because I think this is, playing the game again, I think this is the worst level in the game, and probably one of the worst levels I've ever seen in a video game, where you'll come into these rooms and you'll aggro fucking 12 enemies at a time. Like 12 enemies from all over the map just immediately look at you and just go just rush you like crazy. So you've got like fucking like 6 enemies all rushing at you from like this giant room, and you have to take them out one by one, slowly and slowly, one by one, killing these enemies. The slightest mistake, you'll die, and it's so fucking tedious. Anytime I wanted to fight the smelter demon, it's like I had to fucking kite these enemies one by one and kill like fucking 20 enemies. It was so fucking arduous and like terrible. I was so fucking mad because I just wanted to get it done. So I would try to rush to Smelter Demon's room, and you can't. You can't fucking do it. The enemies aggro you too much. They can also attack you while you're trying to go through fog doors and pull switches and open doors. That kept happening to me. There's one part of the Iron Keep where you're in this small little hallway with these like turtle type enemies. They take forever to kill. And you can't run past them. It's impossible. They're literally blocking this like tunnel. So you have to one by one kill these fucking things. And like, oh my god, it was the most tedious fucking thing. And then I got to Shrine of Amana, and holy shit, this level. Just like these sorcery enemies, just all over the place. And again, mobs of enemies all over the place with these bullshit homing missile attacks that track you from across the goddamn map. Again, I had to fucking use a bow and just snipe them. And even then it was hard because they could still, as soon as you hit them with the bow, they'd immediately be like throwing their sorcery shit all over at you. Man, the Shrine of Amana, a lot of people like, you know, harp on this level. And I think it was nerfed in some ways, but holy shit. It pissed me off so much. Like every level was just mobs of enemies being thrown at you. The bosses are lazy, unimaginative. And when they're not, they just throw mobs at you. In New Game Plus, which I had to do, the game just throws red phantoms at you constantly. The Lost Sinner fight, oh, how are we going to make this harder? Here, throw 2 red phantoms that throw pyromancy at you right in the middle of the fight. That's fun. The Royal Rat Authority, throw 1 million rats at you while you're trying to fight this boss. It's horrible. I was so fucking annoyed by this game the entire time. Really, there's actually only one level that I would argue is good. Hyde's Tower of Flame is fucking horrendous too. Like 1 million of these giant knights enemies that immediately aggro you, and you have to kill like 3 at a time. You can't even properly kite them. Oh my god, really fucking frustrating. But yeah, the gutter is, I think, the only level that's actually good in this game. And people often, I think, shit on the gutter and call it like a bad level. I actually disagree. I think it's really cool. Because it's unique. You have to use your torch to kind of light the way. And it feels maze-like at first, but as long as you're looking out for these sconces and lighting them, you can kind of light your path towards the next bonfire. And I think that's a really cool mechanic. I think it's what they originally intended when the game first came out, but the lighting was so terrible that you couldn't properly do it. But now they kind of fixed that. So the gutter is this really cool level. I actually really enjoy it. I've always kind of enjoyed it, but I think it's hands down the best level in the game. And I wish the rest of the game, they weren't afraid to actually get a little creative with the level design instead of just throwing mobs of enemies at you. But yeah, no, Dark Souls 2, I've talked about this long enough. Honestly, it's kind of a terrible game. I can't believe I ever liked it. I don't know what was wrong with me. I guess it was like the hype coming from Dark Souls 1. The hype for a new Souls game was just so much. But I played it multiple times after that, so I don't know. It's weird. It's really weird. I don't know. I was apparently a complete idiot, but yeah, no, this is definitely the worst Souls game by far. People have always said that, and I 100% see it now. I think it really took playing Dark Souls 3 immediately before it to really kind of notice. Like, I was just loving Dark Souls 3. I just absolutely adored it, and then I come to this, and I'm just like fucking despising it. So yeah, it's crazy. But let's talk about a game that I fucking loved. Let's stop with the negativity here. Let's go with Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. What a surprise this game was. I don't have the physical copy. I did, unfortunately, trade this in. I don't actually see myself playing it again. Maybe, like, way later I might buy it again. I got the Platinum Trophy, so I got the 100% completion in it. Yeah, so I was definitely looking forward to this game. I mean, I love Metroidvanias. I love Igarashi's games. I think Area of Sorrow is the only one I haven't played at this point. I love Metroidvanias. I just absolutely adore them. So, obviously, I was kind of interested in this game, but I think it's had a bit of a rocky development. It's been delayed multiple times. It's changed art styles. And there's always been like this negativity around it. I think a lot of people were afraid it might not end up being that good. Curse of the Moon was really cool. Like, it was a cool 2D game. So that kind of brought people's spirits up a little bit. They thought, oh, but, you know, maybe this game might not be so bad. But yeah, up until release, I was kind of, I don't know, I'm looking forward to it, but a little hesitant, a little cautious. So to my surprise, this is the best game I've played this year. And this is one of the best Metroidvanias I've ever played. Like, it's up there with Hollow Knight for me. This is better than any of the GBA and DS Castlevanias that I've played. It honestly, as far as game design goes, it's honestly close with Symphony of the Night. I don't think it quite dethrones Symphony of the Night, but it's close. Love this game. Definitely play it. It's honestly kind of shocking how good this game ended up being. So we'll just go over the positives. Story, okay, so the story is not much to write home about. I mean, this is like with every Castlevania game. Has a Castlevania game ever had a good story? No, it hasn't. It's pretty simplistic. I'm not even going to really talk about it that much. It's not totally engaging. I mean, some of the characters are pretty cool, but it's not, you know, it's not the reason you're going to be playing this game. The reason you'll be playing this game is the level design, the exploration, the character progression. All this is where the game just absolutely shines. So it really does feel like a Symphony of the Night, where you've got this giant. It's not really like a giant. Well, it kind of is like a giant castle, but it's this huge environment. This kind of open-ended map. It plays out like Symphony of the Night, where you have the map on the top right. So you're kind of getting new abilities to kind of allow you to backtrack to older areas and unlock new areas, fighting bosses, killing enemies, leveling up your character, getting new abilities. So it is pretty standard if you've played one of Igarashi's Castlevania games. It obviously borrows a lot of elements from it. It feels, you know, it really does feel like a Castlevania game. But it brings a lot of new ideas to the table, and I think pretty much all of them are resounding successes. So, like Symphony of the Night, you're leveling up your character. Your max level is 99. You're getting stronger. You're equipping weapons and armor and things like that, increasing your stats. And every boss you kill, usually you'll get like a new ability. The abilities are where this game is really actually cool. I don't want to spoil the abilities. I think one of the best things about this game is that satisfying part where you maybe kill a boss or you find a new area and you find a new upgrade. That you remember this area from way back. It's like, oh, how did I get past there? Like, I wonder what I do there. That's, man, I need to get past that area. And then hours later, you get this ability, and you're just like, oh shit! Now I remember that one area that I can go to. And the game actually can be surprisingly obscure with how to progress. And a lot of people have complained about this. I actually didn't mind it. There's only one part of the game, as far as like getting the true ending goes, that's a little bullshit. Now, if you played Symphony of the Night, you're gonna be able to figure it out. But if you haven't, you're gonna get stuck. There's this one certain piece of equipment that you need to actually progress through the game. It's not obvious what the item does for you, and it's in a very weird spot. Like, if you're thorough in this game, like playing this game, I wanted to get 100% completion, so I explored every nook and cranny. So I eventually found this item, but I think people that just want to get to the true ending might actually miss this item. It's not in the most obvious spot. So that was a little bullshit. And there's really only like a bad ending and a true ending. There's not like a good ending in the middle of it. And it's pretty easy to understand that you've gotten a bad ending when you get to it, and you'll probably immediately think, oh, okay, there's something else I have to do here. Yeah, there's definitely have some obscure elements to kind of progress the game, but I don't know. I enjoyed kind of getting lost in these environments, and all these new abilities are so fucking cool. It's one of the abilities, the way it kind of changes how you explore the game and how you like look at the environments is really fucking cool. I was not expecting it at all, and it really surprised me. Now, the really cool thing with this game, though, is the shard system. So it reminds me of like Dawn of Sorrow a little bit with the soul system, where every enemy you kill, or at least most of every enemy you kill, like 90% of them, have a chance of dropping a shard. And a shard is basically a different, like an ability that you can use. And there's different shards you can equip. There's passive shards. Some might increase your strength or luck or intelligence. There's summon shards where you'll summon an enemy to attack for you. There's familiar shards, where it's like in Symphony of the Night, where you have a familiar that follows you throughout the entire game, and it will attack enemies periodically. And then you have like just directional shards, where you can kind of aim these attacks. You might have like these daggers that you can throw, or like a fireball that you can throw. So yeah, different types of shards that you kind of equip. And if you get multiple of the same one, it will increase the strength of that shard, which is really cool, a really smart idea. But you can also rank up each shard in the game by going to a shopkeeper and using materials to upgrade it, which is also really cool. So the customization here is insane, and when you consider the fact that each enemy drops a different shard, a different kind of attack, it's kind of crazy how open-ended the customization is. So you can kind of create different builds, especially with the fact that the different weapon types all attack very differently. You might want to maybe go for a great sword, or you want to go for a regular sword, or maybe a dagger, or even a gun. Gun builds, from what I've seen, are actually shockingly strong in this game if you craft some like really powerful bullets. So yeah, so many different ways of building your character, and you're constantly being rewarded in this game. There's constantly a new ability that you're finding, a new piece of equipment, a new weapon, a new piece of armor, a new shard, and you're constantly seeing what works and what doesn't, what works for different enemies, what works for different bosses. And this is the exciting part of this game. This, combined with the fact that the level design is just super strong and very consistent. And then you've got that exploration where you're constantly thinking of new places to go. You're constantly looking in the map and seeing, oh, where haven't I gone yet? You're constantly seeing new areas. And the bosses are excellent too. I honestly, there was rarely a time where I actually disliked a boss in this game. All of them had really cool attacks. The one thing I will say with this game, like with Symphony of the Night, I think it does get easier as you go. And there's a few abilities in this game that I think are a little broken. The summon painting ability, I think is pretty broken, where you get like this leaf shield type thing where there's portraits that kind of constantly surround you, and they'll attack enemies. So it's very effective against bosses because you can just stand still and they'll keep hitting a boss. And when you upgrade it to the fullest, it just adds more portraits to it. So it's a little broken, that ability, I feel. And the game can be a little difficult in the beginning, especially that first Zangetsu fight. But after that, it starts to get easier. You'll start to get crazy weapons. The weapon I used, I think they called it the Bavia Latia or something. I can't pronounce the name of it. It was this wind sword type weapon that attacked extremely quickly. So you could just like plow through enemies. But eventually, like a little more than halfway through it, it wasn't really cutting it for me anymore. So I switched to different weapons and kind of explored a little bit more. But yeah, the difficulty level of the game is not super high. The only times it was really challenging is taking on some of the optional bosses earlier than you should. And then the super mega optional boss in this game was actually pretty tough. It took me a few tries. Yeah, and that's the other thing I want to bring. The secrets in this game, of the hidden stuff in this game, is so cool. There are so many cool little secrets that you'll find in this game that will really surprise you. So many little details that Igarashi and his team have kind of thrown in there. There's one certain secret level part of the game that really caught me by surprise, and I was just like, oh, so in love with it. So I was so addicted to this game, I could not put it down. So to get the true ending and get 100% completion, I even went and got all the items, which was a little tedious. Oh yeah, no, before I mention that, the meal system I want to mention, which is really fucking cool as well. So there's a crafting system in this game. You can craft weapons and armor. A lot of these you can't actually find throughout the environment. So again, rewarding that exploration for finding materials and getting some rare drops. Again, this game is so good at rewarding the player and making sure that there's excitement around every corner. But the food system in this game is really fucking cool. So a lot of games I find food cooking systems are just lame and don't really provide a useful benefit. This game, they figured out a really cool way to make it worth your time, where if you find different materials throughout the environment or buy different materials like flour and eggs and stuff like that, you can make meals, like prepared meals. And these meals will actually give you permanent stat boosts the first time you consume them. So you're actually encouraged to basically prepare different meals because you'll get stronger. Now, every time you consume them after that, they'll basically just give you like a temporary stat bonuses and then some health as well. But yeah, very cool way to encourage you to actually use this meal system. So I loved it. I actually wanted to make as many of these meals as I could because these stat bonuses were just really cool. And a real cool way to make sure that your character was always getting stronger. Really neat. I mean, it's a very minor thing, but I really appreciated it. I felt like it added a lot to the game. So yeah, this getting full completion took me like maybe 15 hours. It's not like a super huge game, but I was so addicted to it that I basically beat it in like 2 sittings. Like I could not put this fucking game down, and I can't remember the last time. I think it was Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu the last time I was this addicted to a game, and I love when a game has such a hold on me that I just cannot put it down, and it's all I think about. It's all I want to do. It's the kind of game where it sounds silly, but I was like having fucking dreams about this game. Like it's I don't know. It sounds goofy, but man, I absolutely fucking adored this game. Now it's not perfect. The Switch port, from what I've heard, is a bit of a mess. They're currently trying to fix it, but it looks really ugly compared to the PS4 and Xbox One versions. It also runs at 30 frames per second compared to 60, which is a bit unfortunate. And I think the loading times in it are supposed to be extremely bad. So if you only have a Switch, I would say maybe wait on the game. Don't maybe jump in and get it right away. But the PS4 version, I thought it ran extremely well, and I think after all these art style changes, the game looks really good as well. I think I don't know, I think there's a lot of flavor to this game. There's a lot of cool scenery that you'll find. It's varied as well. A lot of varied locales that you'll be kind of going through. And the enemy designs, I have to mention the enemy designs in this game. They're so fucking weird, and some of them are really creepy. There's like this music-based enemy that I don't really want to spoil that I was just like, what is this? This game is not afraid to be weird and bizarre with its enemy designs, and I love that. It's so cool. A lot of the boss designs are really neat as well. So anyways, yeah, 15 hours it took to clear the game. PS4, a lot of people have been mentioning like frame rate. Like the frame rate was really consistent for me, but there is a boss towards the end of the game that the frame rate will drop to like 10 frames a second. They actually need to fix that boss. It was a bit of a mess. Really cool gimmick to that boss though, which I thought was neat. I don't really want to spoil. But other than that, the game ran fine. People have been reporting crashes. I didn't find a single crash, so maybe I got lucky. I was playing on PS4 Pro. The one thing I will say, there was a game-breaking bug. I mean, you probably won't run into it if you start the game now, but if you started the game when it first came out and then patched it during your playthrough to, I think, 1.02, the chests would basically get all fucked up, and chests later in the game that have key items would already be open, so you wouldn't be able to get the actual item to progress the game. And that sucks. That if I ran into that, I would have been pretty annoyed. So yeah, the game, from what I've seen, it can be glitchy for a lot of people. I think I got lucky because yeah, I just never encountered very many. The only thing I really encountered was the final boss, or not the final boss. The boss at the frame rate runs like 10 frames per second. He actually got stuck in the ceiling, and I couldn't actually hit him. So I had to restart my game, which was a little unfortunate. But that was like the only glitch. Loading times aren't too bad on PS4. They're only noticeable when you have to like jump up to a screen above you. And then it will do a load screen for a couple seconds. And then if you're not fast enough, you don't do your jump right, you'll immediately fall back down into the bottom screen. And then you'll go back into another loading screen. So that was noticeable and a little janky. The only other thing I mentioned is the soundtrack, which is good. It's done by the same composer as Symphony of the Night, but I don't know, none of the tracks were really all that memorable to me. Even right now, like a week after playing the game, I don't remember any of the music. It just didn't have that impact that Symphony of the Night does. And the game in general lacks the atmosphere of Symphony of the Night. I think a lot of that has to do with the music. The music in this game just didn't really do it for me. I mean, it's certainly not bad. It's well done, and it's good for what it is. It just doesn't, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me in the way that a lot of the classic Castlevania soundtracks do. But anyways, I almost pretty much reviewed the game there, but I have to talk about this game because I fucking loved it. If you like Metroidvanias, this is a no-brainer. You absolutely must play this game. If you've never liked the Igarashi, they call them Igavanias, then this probably won't change your mind. It has a lot of cool ideas, and I think does do things differently. But if you don't like those types of games, I don't think this is going to change your mind. But yeah, very impressed. It's one of the best things to come out of Kickstarter. I'm very shocked that that they were able to come out with a game as good as it is, and it's my fucking game of the year. I would have never expected that Bloodstained to be my game of the year, but here we are. Yeah, this is not a mighty number 9, and I'm so fucking happy for that. But anyways, let's move on to the last 2 games. So Game of Thrones Telltale, and I actually went on. I'm trying to get all the Telltale games that I want to play and that I really like Wolf Among Us, for instance, on disc, because they're delisting a lot of these games. You're not going to be able to download. You can't download Game of Thrones and play this. If you want to play Game of Thrones Telltale, you have to buy the disc. And this is starting to get a little expensive now. You can find it cheap at EB Games, GameStop right now. But if you try to go to eBay, this is starting to climb up in price. So if there's Telltale games you're interested in, go and get them now, because this is the, you might have not even be able to play this, because you still have to download the 6th game from the server. And it's still up there, but you just can't download that individually if you want to if you want to play this game. So a lot of these Telltale games are being delisted, and this is why it's this scary part of game preservation and digital games. A lot of these games are going to be fucking lost to time. Scott Pilgrim still makes me fucking angry, because that game's fucking awesome, and there's no way to play that game anymore. Simpsons arcade game. It was on the PlayStation Network for hardly any time at all, and they delisted it. You can't play it anymore. So yeah, get these games now while you can. It's pretty scary. But so I went through this game. Game of Thrones. It's one of those shows that I love the first 6 or 7 seasons. Maybe not the 7th too much, but the show started off so good, and then of course we had that season 8, which pretty much everyone hates at this point. I liked it at first, or thought it was decent, but the more I've thought about it, the more I've kind of hated it. And now I'm at the point where I actually do think Season 8 was extremely disappointing. So it was interesting going back to this game, which kind of has events that were in the books, but were kind of taking place at the same time as the show from I think the end of Season 3 up till Season 5, I want to say, the beginning of Season 5. And this focuses on the Forrester house, which I feel like was mentioned in the show, but I think they're actually talked about a lot more in the book. So it's cool that you actually see this this house, and it's kind of it almost reminds me of the House Stark. So it's almost like the remnants of this house, and you're kind of seeing these characters trying to pick themselves up together, and kind of they're trying to make this house survive, because they've just had so many setbacks and tragic events happen to them, which I don't really want to spoil. So it's cool. It's cool to see these characters, and it's cool to follow this Game of Thrones storyline where you're actually making choices. Like with a lot of Telltale games, though, it turns out your choices don't actually mean much. And there's a lot of parts in this game where you're like, holy shit, what would happen if I did something else? And it turns out, no, not much changes. It's very little minor variance. So yeah, unfortunately, like with a lot of Telltale games, there's this illusion of choice rather than actual choice. But I think the actual story here, though, is just so compelling, and the writing is actually quite good. And it has a lot of classic fucked up Game of Thrones elements to it that it ends up being pretty engaging. It being such a story-heavy game, there's not too much I can say about it. But if you like Game of Thrones, I think it's interesting to go back to it. And it's kind of funny that this is actually better written than the last season of Game of Thrones, which is pretty sad, actually. The ending is a little, I don't know, the ending is a little underwhelming, and the, I already don't remember his name, but there's a Night's Watch White Walker storyline in this that I didn't think was that engaging. And it's in typical Game of Thrones fashion. I always found that Game of Thrones is less compelling when it focuses on the generic fantasy elements, the dragons, the White Walkers, the magic. Whenever it focuses on that stuff, it is when Game of Thrones is at its worst. When it's actually focusing on character drama and political intrigue, and the relationships between the houses, that's when it's most interesting. That to me is Game of Thrones is when it's most successful. When it leans too heavily into the fantasy tropes is when it's boring. And yeah, this game, there's a whole like character that's focused on that stuff, and it's not interesting at all. But overall, I enjoyed it. I gotta say, I was kind of surprised by it. I was pretty engaged. So if you're a Game of Thrones fan, I think it's worth checking out. And then finally, the last game here, we've got Onimusha Warlords on PS4, remaster of the first Onimusha game. And I do wish they kind of just did all three, the three PS2 games in one collection. I think that would have been cooler. I enjoyed this. It's not like an amazing game. It's, it's this decent, solid game. It's kind of weird because it's kind of like Resident Evil in the sense that you have like these fixed camera angles. But the combat it's kind of hack and slash combat, but it's nothing like a Devil May Cry or anything. It's definitely nowhere near as flashy or as advanced as that. There's not too many attacks, and it can kind of feel clunky. But there's a parry and a block system that you pretty much have to use to survive in this game. And there is something satisfying about the combat. I don't know, the thing that I think that's kind of bad about it is that the camera angles can really fuck you in a lot of ways. With positioning, there's just a lot of times where the camera angle will fuck you in a way that you have to get hit by enemies. But I know there's a lot of healing items that you'll find in this game, and it's overall not too difficult, so it's not like a huge problem. Really, I just liked the exploration in this game. I liked how short the game was, and how there was like backtracking, and you had to like solve some puzzles sometimes. It kind of, I don't know, it kind of felt like an old school Resident Evil game with its progression, which I thought was kind of cool. But some of the puzzles are fucking annoying. That water puzzle, like a lot of people bring it up, and it's not, the puzzle itself is not that bad. It's not that tricky, and you'll eventually get it. The problem is you have to do two sections before it and then watch a bunch of unskippable cutscenes. So every time you fail that water puzzle, you have to go through a bunch of bullshit every time to reach it. It pisses me off. I don't know. In fact, the biggest complaint I have with this game is the unskippable cutscenes. Maybe it was too hard to go back and fix that. Because you saw this with the Final Fantasy X remaster as well. I mean, maybe it actually would have ruined the game. Like, maybe with the technology, they couldn't quite do it. Like, maybe it would have taken too much time. I don't know the reasonings behind it, but man, unskippable cutscenes are the fucking worst. A lot of the boss battles are cool in this game too, actually. But the only other thing I would say about it is the final boss is horrible. It's an insane damage sponge. It wasn't that difficult. It just took forever. Like, I don't know. I was considering going for the platinum in this game, but then I realized you had to do the Oni Spirits mode, where you have to basically go through 20 stages where you have to kill all these enemies in a time limit and collect all these souls in a time limit. I got to like level 10 and died, and then you have to do it all over again. And I was like, no, okay, I'm good. I'm not gonna do that. That's not fun. But yeah, a pretty enjoyable game. I liked it. I'd be curious to see the next Onimusha games, because I'm pretty sure they obviously have to improve upon this one. So I don't know, it can be dated in some ways, but I still think it's an enjoyable game, and it's cheap. You can get this game for like $20 max, probably even cheaper than that, to be honest. I paid like 18 for it, I think, which is well worth it. I think it's well worth a playthrough at that price. It's just cool to see like this samurai themed almost Resident Evil game. It's a samurai Resident Evil game in a way, which is cool. Yeah, it's a cool game. It's I think definitely worth checking out. But that's it, guys. What have you guys been playing? What are you guys looking forward to? A lot of games coming up soon. I'm definitely pumped for Fire Emblem. That's the next big game for me. Really gonna go crazy with that one. That one just looks fantastic. Mario Maker 2 came out. I've been kind of tempted to get it. It does look really good. Link's Awakening we've got coming soon, which I'm of course excited for. Anytime a new Zelda game it comes out, I'm excited for. I want to play Cadence of Hyrule. It came out pretty recently, but I mean, I kind of can't really afford it at the moment. I gotta think about Japan, so that's a game I'm probably gonna have to play later in the year, I think. But it looks terrific. Yeah. Anyways, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.